All right, Dave Chang is here. We're taping this on a Monday. Last night, Dave was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and became the first celebrity ever to win $1 million, which I would have really loved to see unfold, not knowing what happened. But of course, we had dinner 3 weeks ago and you blurted it out and swore me to secrecy. But my kids who knew nothing, my son has never been more impressed with any friend I have. So let's start there. You've impressed my son, who is unimpressed in general. But you set a record here. More importantly, for people who you know have gambling issues, who want to roll the dice. You're a hero now. It actually worked out.
It is a positive gambling story. Can you believe that? Oh my God. And if I got Ben Simmons' approval, then I don't need to live anymore. That's it. I've reached the pinnacle.
I wish I had been there as this was unfolding, because I have gambled with you. And I think both of us have the same issue where we always think it's going to turn around. We're always going to roll the dice. We're always going to go, it's 3:30 in the morning. It's like, oh, new dealer. Things are going to turn. We're hopeful gamblers. And in this case, you're trying to win $1 million for charity. You correctly assess it as, wow, I'm up to, what was it, 250K, where the first time you're like, oh, I could just bank this. This would be a lot of stuff. And you start thinking, no, actually, if we got to $1 million, now I'm actually going to raise real awareness too. So what was the gambling problem versus awareness for the charity you're raising ratio in your head as this is unfolding?
It was a fight to the death. It really was. I watched it for the first time last night too. And I think right around the $250,000 mark, that's when it gets to be a big delta between that number, 250 plus, and the 32,000 minimum that you can walk away with. And it started actually to get serious at 64,000. Because I think I made at that question the most cavalier decision of just being like, fuck it. I'm not going to ask anyone. I'm just going to guess, because I was like, it's not that bad. And it's not embarrassing. My whole goal was I just don't want to be the laughing stock of Millionaire. And then you got the questions really do get more difficult when you're in the chair. And right around the 250, $500,000 mark, that's when I'm thinking just constant fear of, you're just going to fuck this up, Dave. You're just going to fuck this up. So I honestly don't even know what I was thinking, because the rational side of me is like, you should bail at $500,000. Clearly,
I knew what you were thinking because I know you, and I could see your fucking wheels turning. Once you realized the $1 million was in play, and you had two questions left.
But
had I not known what's going to happen, I would have been like, "Oh, he's going for this. He's just going for it."
Yeah, I mean, those that know me, of course, know like I can't resist that impulse, and then. The calculation that I didn't verbalize, that I think I tried to explain on the $1 million question, was if I lose, it's actually sort of a win, as embarrassing as it would be. Because if I walk away at $500,000, no one's ever going to talk about it. I mean, there's 6 celebrities that have walked away from $500,000. No one ever knows, those names or even the charities they were for. And the restaurant industry is totally fucked right now. And I just don't think on the media's end, people are talking enough about the problems. And this was all the way at the end of August. And I just was like, what's the most embarrassing thing? And then if I had to explain to people that I did it to raise awareness, then in my mind, it would sort of rationalize me answering it incorrectly. And also, all that aside, I have a gambling issue. And that's ultimately what pushed me over the edge.
Well, you did it. The smart move was when you rolled the dice at the 64, because you kept all your options open for help later on. And you also got rid of the 50-50, which I agree with. I think the 50-50 is a little overrated.
That's actually
compared to the other ones, right?
Yeah, but it's difficult. I sort of regretted doing that, because it was either 50-50 or ask the host. But you're close with Kimmel. Kimmel knows a lot of stuff about pop culture.
Yeah.
And I thought the 50-50 would come into play very handy maybe later on, like the $1 million question. So I debated that quite a bit. I think they edited out a few me hemming and hawing over what to actually do. But that was a good one to get rid of.
More importantly, I mean, beyond the $1 million you raised for charity and the fact that you now become the guy who's mentioned, you're like Flipper Anderson on Sunday when they were like, Tyreek Hill, 262 yards. The record is held by Flipper Anderson. You're just mentioned on Who Wants to Be a Billionaire for the rest of your life. But more importantly, one of the great Asian sports moments of all time.
Thank you. I don't think it's getting enough play.
Yeah, Linsanity's won. Not only do you get to $1 million, but your dream team of smart people you assembled, Mina Kimes and Alan Yang.
That is going underrated, I think. Team Asia America to the highest degree. And, people don't realize Alan's really goddamn smart. I mean, he graduated Harvard like 19 or 20. And Mina, it was like an English major or history major, and she graduated near the top of her class at Yale. And I graduated with a C+ from Trinity College. So I was leaning on either of them, right? And I remember asking Mina or Alan, whoever got back to me first would have been my friend to sit down with. So I don't know if it's got enough play that it was an all-Asian team that broke the 20-year drought.
It was such good drafting of your teammates that I didn't even get offended that I wasn't even considered because you figure with me, sports and pop culture, I have those two covered. I would have been in trouble with the Batman question and some of the other stuff. But Mina and Yang was an unassailable combo. I have no complaints.
I thought about it a lot, Bill, of course, because people obviously listen to you. They may not understand your encyclopedic knowledge of stats. It's insane. So that I knew was going to be easy. But I also know you don't know too much about like sci-fi and certain kinds of fiction,
comic books.
So I made a list and you were certainly there, and it wasn't about making the all Asian team. I really was just trying to go with, like the stats, give me the highest quant number stuff. And it came out to Mina and Alan for me.
So we have Linsanity, we have this, we have Koo and the Falcons.
Yeah.
What else do we have this decade? Those are probably, is that the big three? Is there one more?
I think that might be it. I mean, you have.
Oh, wait a second. Oh, Mina told me, and I think we might even talked about this in the pod, like the Koreans have claimed Kyler Murray here.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, this is another thing, right?
It's very clear. Well, he got off the Cardinals airplane wearing like a Korean shirt. And I think that represented to everyone that's Korean. It was like, he's in a racial draft. He's ours now.
That's it. We get to take him. Yeah, so that was a big one too. And he was in the MVP discussion. Mina texted me because we were texting about it this morning, and we were talking about you and your love for gambling and how, that there came a moment where we were like, oh my God, this is so much money. And it's like, no, got to keep going. Mina said, what you witnessed is the inherent contradiction that lies within all Koreans: extreme cautiousness and an addiction to betting. Do you agree with that?
That is the truest statement I've heard in a long time. Yeah. A real paradox. I was one side of my brain being like, hey, I can't embarrass. This is a lot of money. And the other side, there was no reason. It absolutely makes no goddamn sense why I decided to go for it. Like, it was just crazy. It's totally insane.
Well, especially when you didn't totally know if Benjamin Harrison was a president or not. And I got to be honest, I didn't either, but I knew it wasn't Grant. So the last question for people who didn't see it was basically, who was the first president who had electricity in the White House?
Yes.
And two of the candidates were Grant and Andrew Jackson. And I knew those two weren't because it was too close to the Civil War. And I didn't think they had electricity in the White House probably to the late 1800s. So it was between Benjamin Harrison and Chester Arthur.
Right.
Which, if you had done your 50-50, if you'd kept it, had they narrowed it down and it had been one of the Civil War presidents with Benjamin Harrison, I think you would have known. But you had Mina instead. It took you like 17 seconds to read the question.
Yeah.
She had 13 seconds to digest it, and she basically spat out Benjamin Harrison, then got cut off.
Yeah, and if you watch the show, we go back and call her after I win, and she says she was going to add but Grover Cleveland, who wasn't even part of the list.
Right.
So all five of those presidents sort of were presidents in succession, starting with Johnson, Grant, and then it goes Arthur, Harrison, Cleveland, or something like that. Anyway,
yeah,
the 50-50 would not have helped me out at all. In fact, I probably would have chosen Chester Arthur or something like that. I legitimately didn't know the answer. I didn't even know Harrison was a president. And that was, for me, my personal gambling intuition was the aha. This is I have no idea. That's got to be something, right? And I knew Chester Arthur was a president. I had no idea what year. So it was really, to me, Harrison was the thing that stuck out the most. And then when Mina said it, but it wasn't, she said probably. That's what threw me off.
And then you had Yang, who came through big time with the Batman comic.
Dude, he was so... Mina deservedly getting all the hype and praise. Like, there's no question I wouldn't have won this without her, but I wouldn't have gotten here without Alan Yang. I mean, that guy saved my ass in so many ways. Like, I honestly didn't know, Bill, even the first one, the Clean Play Club, on the a couple episodes ago. I had no idea, because when you're sitting in that chair, all sort of form of reason and logic for me sort of went out the window. So it was great to have someone to just be like, you sure this is right? You sure this is right? And then that Superman question, did you know that answer?
No, I would have been out. You would have gone to me, and I would have just had the I'm trying to think of a good football coach, the Matt Patricia look on my face, just staring helplessly.
Because I had no idea. I was a little bummed that he didn't know definitively what the answer was. He was like, I think it could be Superman holding a car over his head. So
this was big for Yang. Yang was running out of ways to get women. I think he only had about 15 different ways. So now he's got the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire as well. Just an unassailable package for that kid.
Really sort of the MVP, right? Like, if I had to give an MVP of the series, Nino got the last game-winning shot, but
Nino was like Steve Kerr in the Bulls. What year was that? First Bulls Jazz series. Yeah. She came in and hit the 18-footer, but Yang had a triple-double.
Yang was a series MVP.
When you're sitting in that chair and the adrenaline's really going, so now it's like the equivalent of if we're playing blackjack and you split threes, and then you get another three, and all of a sudden you have 7 hands on the table, and your heart just starts pounding. Is it like that multiplied by 700?
Yeah, you're probably playing third base anchor, and let's just say you have $500, $1,000, a lot of money per hand, and you get eights, and you keep on splitting, but the dealer's showing, a jack 10.
Yeah,
and you split it now to the maximum 4 or 5 times, and each 8 you're getting another 8 or a 3, and you got a double. And that's what it felt like. Each question was like more splits and more doubles, and it's really hard. Like, watching from TV is easy. Like, everything sort of makes sense when you're hearing the question. The thing that threw me off, though, would add to the pressure if you're playing blackjack, this music that's like blasting into your ear.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like in casino, you're sort of like, you're owning your little bubble, and the lights are flashing. And if there's music, that I think would add to the adrenaline rush at the blackjack table.
You know Kimmel pretty well.
I do.
He's trying to do these, keep the drama going, be suspenseful, fuck with you, which is his favorite thing to do with anybody he knows. So this is like everything he's ever liked about anything. And he's drawing out whether you were right or wrong once we get to like 64K. Were you just like scrutinizing him like he was, like, what is that experience like?
It's almost like waiting to get like an STD result or something, like something terrible, because it's like over and over and over. Even the questions like, what's animal can't jump? And of course it's an elephant. You still think you could be wrong. Every question, at least from my perspective, is I could be wrong. It's not like I'm right. And Jimmy, even on the simplest ones, is just fucking with you, right? And I honestly don't know how he did it. Right. I thought maybe they're like writing it out on his computer screen, because it was like so perfect in how he fucks with you. Particularly how he sort of like draws out the answer. It was excruciatingly painful. Yeah. He's very good at it.
Did you think at all of having Jay Gruden as in the Alan Yang seat or no? Daniel Snyder? Who would have been the worst candidate? Daniel Snyder, probably.
No, Jim Zorn.
Jim Zorn. he just would have stood there in complete silence the whole time. All right, tell everybody about the charity you did it for and why you did it and what it means.
Well, my buddy Chris Shepard started a charity a few years back called Southern Smoke, based out of Texas, but it has evolved to become a national charity that has teamed up with a few other smaller ones to basically give financial assistance to anybody in the hospitality sector, basically getting a grant for money. And it's one of the very few national charities that does that. So that's why I wanted to do that. There's so many worthy charities, but this culinary industry, the restaurant industry, is just getting demolished right now. So that was the one I had to choose.
Let's take a break, and I want to talk about what's going on in the restaurants. All right, we're back. You mentioned restaurants as we head into the break. You and I and a couple of our friends who went to Parks Barbecue, I think 3 Fridays ago, did a distance dinner, and we knew it was kind of the last supper. Everything got shut down within probably a week after, at least here in LA. And depending on what state you live, things either really shut down or they're kind of shutting down, or who knows. But I think for the most part, in the big restaurant cities, it's looking bleak, and it looks like it's going to be bleak for the next 4 months. What is the way out? Let's say the vaccine comes April, May, life starts to look relatively normal again by next September to be safe. What do restaurants look like by then?
I don't want to be doom and gloom. I usually am doom and gloom. It's not good, even with the vaccine. And first of all, we have to get through this winter, and shutting down. Listen, there's a healthy debate about whether that should even be allowed because of COVID, right? And I think if we had government assistance, we should have shut down. And it could have. We didn't have to be here, number one. Like, there were so many other avenues, and we got here out of sheer incompetence from our government. And it's unfortunate because it's a trolley car problem. A lot of restaurateurs and workers don't even want to be there out of safety, but like they feel like, oh, I sort of have to. That being said, you have to get through winter. You have to figure out how to make ends meet because the fixed costs of restaurants haven't changed. And we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen. If we don't get a stimulus package for both the workers in restaurants, that is what's most important. The people that work in restaurants have to be taken care of before the restaurants. That is a longer story, but that's just what I think. Because you can't save all the restaurants. That's just not going to happen. So let's just say Georgia flips and we get stimulus, and that's probably the most important thing we can have happen to ensure that the 2 Senate seats in Georgia flip. Let's just say all that happens and then we get a vaccine. You're probably going to have a bunch of closures between now and then until spring. It's right now a survival. Who can make it to spring?
Yeah.
Right. And then because outdoor dining was such a boon to so many restaurants, that's my concern is right now we can address one problem that I know is going to be an issue. And it's not fun to talk about, but I mean, we're doing this by Zoom right now. We both have employees, and it's not just that. Everyone that works may never go back to their corporate office environment like they used to. Maybe it's 2-3 days, maybe it's 4 days. If you remove 1 day a week of office people going to work, that's devastating for the restaurant industry. 1 day, right? We're talking about slim margins at best, and that's giant repercussion from getting your coffee in the morning to your lunch salads and sandwiches, you name it. It makes it difficult because corporate business is so important for restaurants. It's very similar to the economics in flying commercially, where the business class takes like 20% of the real estate on a plane, but like 30%, 40% of the revenue. Very similar for restaurants, regardless. It doesn't have to be a fancy restaurant or not, because in New York, if you are a bodega and you sell bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches and dollar cups of coffee, like those are people that are going to work. Yeah. Without that income, unfortunately, like I'm not an economist, it has repercussions that I don't think are going to be good. And we can address that now. And we're not. And that's why I'm like, what the fuck are we doing?
Well, and also all the live event stuff in the bigger cities, I think is a disaster too for 95 different reasons. Total
disaster.
And but we don't even know when that comes back. We don't know when. I mean, I think the leagues are optimistic, and places like Live Nation, they're optimistic too. Like this summer, people are going to want to go out and do stuff again. But, it's one of those things we need to see it. I do think if we get the vaccine going and everything could be ready in time for the summer, it could be a really cool summer next summer where, sorry, Kyle. Let me start over. 3, 2, 1. It could be a really cool summer next summer where everyone's just letting loose. I mean, even when we saw each other a couple weeks ago, and I've had a couple distance dinners, and I've tried to make an effort to see people a little bit more because I think everybody starts to lose their mind when they've just been around the same people, same environment all the time. But I do think there's an appreciation now for gathering with other people and seeing other people and not having your face covered and all of these basic things that we took for granted. So I do. The optimistic Bill, glass half full Bill, thinks when we can get through all this, it will actually be really good for restaurants. I just don't know how many of them are going to be left.
Exactly. And I think you just accurately predicted what's going to happen. Restaurants aren't going away. This is not the end of restaurants. It's just a lot of restaurants that shouldn't have gone out of business probably will go out of business. But that mere act of breaking bread, of talking to people that you care about, laughing, drinking, having too much wine. Like, these are the best things, right? Like, I miss it so much. I mean, I'm so tired of cooking in my own home. And that dinner we had was a total blast. And I take that for granted all the time. That was one dinner. We used to have dinners all the time.
I know.
I know what I just said is pretty dour, but I am absolutely optimistic. I do believe that we're going to be able to, support the business in the right ways. I have to remain hopeful in that.
Well, if we go glass half full with some stuff, like you mentioned how, human beings adapt. Like we did it with podcasts. We never thought to do stuff on Zoom until March, and now we do almost all of our podcasts on Zoom. I think you're right about offices where maybe people don't go to an office 5 days a week. Maybe they'd go 3, stuff like that. I'm trying to think how this could be good for restaurants, like what the positives are. One of the things is I do think they've gotten better at the delivery stuff.
Yeah.
And whether it's basically all the good restaurants now being on Postmates, Caviar, DoorDash, Uber Eats, whatever it is, they're all on there. Especially out here in LA, there's restaurants I'd never, ever in a million years thought would be on a food delivery site that they are. I also think they've gotten better at, cranking the stuff out, being ready to handle demand, things like that. And maybe that's just where things are going. Maybe less people are going to go out to eat, and maybe delivery is going to be more and more important. You've been saying this since like 2015.
Yeah, I mean, I started to do businesses just doing delivery only. They were a little bit too early. But you're right. Delivery is the future. And, this pandemic restaurants experiences difficulty. This was going to happen regardless of the pandemic. This was going to happen over a 10 to 15 year period. This just accelerated it all into 9 months. And there's no question that if you didn't open up your business to delivery, things were going to get tough. That was happening anyway. And in fact, I'd argue the people that were had that already, like Sugar Fist has been doing really well. They already had the delivery and the packaging, and restaurants like that have been doing extremely well. Like high-end sushi, because it's just certain things were designed to be delivered. They're crushing. But if you're trying to figure out that game, it may not be the right thing. Like pizza's been crushing. I mean, that is probably the number one food to be delivered. But for us, we're Momofuku, we're lucky because we're selling consumer product goods of salts and spices and soy sauce and stuff like that. Like that was part of our plan to evolve out of the restaurants anyway. So, anything and everything's on the table, right? And if you're a restaurant, or if you're supporting restaurants, you should support them. I think you should choose 2 or 3 restaurants that you love and spend as much money as humanly possible there. And if you are a restaurant owner, I think you have to, it's almost like the end of a season when you're not going to make the playoffs and you start trying to do whatever the fuck because you're like, who cares?
Yeah.
And you're not out of the playoffs quite yet, but you're like, screw it. And that's where we're at. And that is I love that part where you have nothing to lose. And that's where I feel like a lot of restaurants are going to do a lot of innovation. That I think is going to be super cool, where people are like, screw it, this doesn't work anymore. I'm going to do whatever the hell. And I think we're beginning to see that. And I am extremely optimistic about the innovation that you're going to see in the next year plus.
Well, couldn't we see a restaurant with a really good chef that we like just say, fuck it, don't come here. Actually, I'm actually going to devote all my energies that in the old days we would have devoted to how good is my service? What does the inside of my restaurant look like? What is the architecture? All the different nuances that makes a great restaurant. And somebody could just say, yeah, I'm going to have the best delivery. I'm going to have the best system for cranking stuff out, getting food the right temperature, as many people as I can. And maybe that's somebody who's going to be a pioneer. Is anybody doing that yet in a way that you feel like is futuristic?
I'm not sure. I think that there's a lot of, every city's got one restaurant or 2 or 3 restaurant groups that have just adopted a lot of different things. Like I'm thinking about the Linear Group in Chicago. I think they've done an extremely great job of doing everything you're saying. But I mean, for this audience, it's the Ringer Podcast Network and a lot of sports fans. In some ways, the future of restaurants, this is an opportunity for chefs and owners of restaurants to finally embrace analytics, right? It's like, look at the margins, see where things are going to go. And if you don't embrace it, you were going to go to business anyway. So a lot of people are like, well, I don't need that dining room. Why do I need that? Like, this makes me the most amount of money. So you know what? I'm not going to serve 3/4 of the menu. I'm just going to sell the top 3 things that people want anyway. So you're seeing this. And my concern with analytics too is it doesn't make the game beautiful necessarily, right? And I'm worried about that artistry. And I've talked to a lot of my chef friends who see the writing on the wall and what they need to do. And they're like, I don't want to play that way. You know what I mean? They don't want to play like the Houston Rockets, basically.
Well, if analytics takes over, that's good for Domino's and Chipotle and places like that, because they've already crunched all the analytics. You've actually swung my love of Domino's back to loving Domino's again, because you did a whole thing about when the COVID started, you were like, just get Domino's. The oven's like 3,000 degrees. They've mastered basically contactless delivery, and it's good. Yeah. And just do it.
And I did say that, and I don't want people like, oh, you're not supporting independent restaurants. I was simply saying they figured it out. Restaurants we're like the Oakland A's without embracing Moneyball yet. And you're competing against the Yankees and these giant fucking market caps. You can't. As a restaurant, you are competing against people with access to public markets that are on the stock exchange. You can't play that game. You just can't. Domino's, Chipotle, all of these companies, they're not even restaurant groups anymore. They're more like technology companies. You cannot fight them on this. And I spent some time in Domino's and I was like, oh my God, when the pandemic hit, I was like, there's one company that is just going to fucking crush. And it was Domino's, because when I was there, I was shocked that no one even touches the food for the most part.
Yeah.
And pizza is one of the safest things you can eat because of the temperature of the oven. So, it's not an equal playing field, but at that time you want to figure out what's the safest thing to eat, because I didn't know in March, no one knew anything. So,
well, you did a thing on your podcast about the best food to order, like because you figure you order it, they make it, somebody's got to drive it. It's about a 45-minute to 60-minute stretch before you actually get the food. And you arrived at the same conclusion that the Simmons family has arrived at, which is basically it's pizza and sushi.
Pizza.
Those are the safest 2 things you can get. What else? What am I missing? I guess deli sandwiches.
Sushi is the craziest thing, because I never thought that would actually travel well. And it's like all sushi, like every sushi spot is just crushing, because they're not getting the nigiri, they're getting the rolls, and that travels really well.
It's cold too. That helps. Yeah.
Pizza though, not all pizza travels well, right? Most people, it's like the chicken and egg. Most people that think about pizza now think about the pizza for the Papa John's or the Domino's or the Pizza Huts. It's a denser crust pizza. And there's a lot of pizza technology there's 40 years of pizza technology about keeping it hot from the pizza oven to your house. It's unbelievable about that. So that kind of pizza, the commercially available pizza, travels really well. The thin crust pizza, the Neapolitan style, doesn't travel well at all. Sushi, high-end Italian really works well.
Yeah, like chicken parm, stuff like that, or pasta and meat sauce, all that stuff.
Pastas and cream sauces, all that stuff travels really well. And fried chicken, surprisingly, travels extremely well.
Really?
Yeah.
I've had hit or miss on that, but maybe it depends on the place.
But like if you go to like one of the chains, it just remains crunchy, and it's something that it gets good. So my sort of crucible for the best kind of food to get delivered is, does it get better after 30 minutes? Or does it not lose any of its integrity after 30 minutes? Or does it get better? Like Banchan fried chicken, for example, amazing. Korean fried chicken, really well. Popeyes, I've gotten that a couple times, really good. And the other thing that travels really well is Chinese food. Extremely well.
We should have mentioned Chinese food. It's pizza, sushi, Chinese food. It's the big three. It's not a big two. It's a big three. Yeah, I've noticed one of the things that really helps is actually what you order. Like if you're ordering, I don't know, a pepperoni and mushroom pizza, the mushrooms can end up making it runny by the time you get there, right? Same thing like if you have some scrambled egg scramble thingy and you have mushrooms and other stuff, and then by the time it gets there, it's just super buttery and runny and not great. So you almost have to be strategic with that too. What is it going to be like in 45 minutes?
I mean, it's counterintuitive. And you brought up a good point with pizza and mushrooms and the things that go on it, because you'd think cheese probably delivers really well because it's pizza, but it doesn't. Outside of pizza, anything that's melted cheese delivers horribly.
Yeah.
Right? And you're actually seeing like innovation happen on delivery. And you mentioned it earlier about like people are trying to figure out this game. Tacos, without COVID and the pandemic, I don't know if it would have evolved into what it is now. Like if you try to get tacos, like delivered with it already in the tortilla, it doesn't deliver that well. But a lot of these places have figured out how to like serve these kits, right? Where there's all these ways you can make it really delicious at home. So that's what's good to see. But like if you order a quesadilla, does not travel well at all. Trust me,
tacos are probably the all-time hit or miss. Because first of all, the shell has to stay crunchy, but they also, the way they package it, and that's something that I think has been a huge advantage for the sushi places, at least out here. They put a lot of care and thought into how they're separating the food from each other, what's going into where. Everything is a way so that it doesn't get accidentally opened in the bag as the person's driving.
Yeah. No, they've had a head start, but I'm telling you, Bill, like all these other kinds of foods are cracking the code. So I'm seeing it with tacos right now. I've been getting meal kits from like Guisados or Tacos 1986. There's a bunch of places that are getting there, and it's who
created the meal kit? The meal kit seems relatively new to me. Is that Nancy Silverton? Who was the first one?
No, I mean the meal kit probably
like
Blue
for
Apron.
Delivery. I mean,
I don't know. A lot of us, we're on Goldbelly.
I want to talk about Goldbelly. That's coming up after the break.
So that's been huge for a lot of restaurants, but the meal kit itself, I don't think anyone can lay a claim to that, because that's sort of been around for a while. Because let's just say you loved going to Momofuku for a while. I mean, like Major Domo in LA, and you wanted to get, some of that food to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I know restaurants have done it for their special guests. Well, they'll make a lot of the stuff at home, like take it 90% there, and then you can finish it at home. So that's sort of been in the arsenal for a lot of restaurants for a while now.
All right, we'll talk Goldbelly. We're going to take one more break. All right, this is not a paid advertisement for Goldbelly. As much as I like Goldbelly, it's super expensive still. It's really frustrating, and I think they're in phase one of a company and a product that will be really cool in about 2 years. I think what's interesting for me is having the ability here in Los Angeles to try food that I've heard secondhand or firsthand from people I like, where they're like, oh man, if you ever go to Memphis, go to this place. If you're ever in Texas, go to here. Goldbelly has some of those places. And again, it's expensive. It's not for everybody. You finally joined Goldbelly with Momofuku doing a couple things, which is already like, you can't get it now until mid-January because there's been demand for it. But in general, this feels like a good thing. I have some questions about what is the percent of how good it would be in a restaurant versus getting it on Goldbelly. But one thing that I've found has been awesome is the pizzas.
Yep.
There's a couple pizzas that they're prepared perfectly and frozen perfectly, and you just throw them in the freezer and then you make them and you follow the instructions, and it's like 90% as good as the real pizza. What is the future of Goldbelly here?
I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's like many things, it's just taken off during the past 9 months. And I think we're entering like the craziest time, because things like Goldbelly are only going to increase in popularity because you have the national reach now.
Yeah.
So a lot of restaurants are getting wise, and they're trying to figure it out how to sell their food to the most amount of people all the time. And the thing that Goldbelly, I think, has done really well is you can't get the whole restaurant, right? You're only getting the things that they're working with the restaurant that will travel well, that will freeze well, or that can get shipped to you the next day without losing quality. And that's the smart thing, right? So you can get king salmon from the Pacific Northwest and Chris Bianco pizza that's frozen, like everything in between.
How about lobster rolls from Maine?
Did you get that?
I haven't gotten that one yet, but it's highly recommended, apparently.
Here's the thing, man. It is expensive, but when you want that fix, people want that flavor, that taste of a restaurant or an area. So I think it's at the really beginning stages of like dominance. So it's going to happen more and more. I think it's going to get way less expensive. It's going to be more affordable as the logistics gets figured out.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a couple of competitors that pop up too. And It will be no different than what happened with Postmates and everybody else. What made you, because initially you resisted this. You finally ended up jumping on with a couple of your dishes, including the pork buns. What kind of process was it to decide how to mail these out at a quality that Dave Chang, psycho, is comfortable with people eating his food at an acceptable level of quality for you?
Well, that was the big thing, is quality, right? It's one of the reasons why I've never done delivery of Momofuku food, because if someone's watching it, eating it in front of their TV at their apartment, they're going to still judge it the same like they were going to the restaurant. So we wanted to make sure we took our time on it, not because we were against it per se. We wanted to figure out how we could ensure the quality. So that was it. It was a long process of figuring out the logistics, of making sure that we could do it on a consistent level, because there's nothing worse than getting something from a restaurant you want and having it suck.
Yeah.
Right. So there was a lot of testing involved. I mean, a lot. I can't tell you how many people got the shipment, and we just got real honest feedback and we dialed it in. So that's what took so long. So
it kind of hurts that I wasn't one of the testers. That's fine. Whatever.
We weren't going all the way to LA. Plus, I was the one that was getting it over the past few months.
Did you flip out? Did you have a tantrum at any point about how bad it was?
No, it was pretty consistent the entire way. But a lot of it was just like when you unbox everything, you want an experience. You want this whole thing that you don't want to just open up the box and be whatever. So there has to be instructions. There's this sense of discovery. So I think we got there. I'm pretty happy with where we're at.
It's a pretty cool time where you can basically cherry pick some of the great restaurants in America and try one or two of their special dishes. If you wanted to splurge every once in a while and really try it out. I like that we're at that point, and I'm excited to see where that goes. On the flip side, I was deleting a whole bunch of, for some reason, I had way too many videos on my phone, and I hadn't really gone through, and my phone was starting to be slow. So I'm like, I'm just going to go, because we're in month 9 of the pandemic. This is the point of the pandemic where you rent the Tyson Jones fight and you delete videos from your iPhone as you're watching it. And I found this video of when House and Nathan and I went to Major Domo, and you brought out what's the giant thing called? The best thing, the giant rib thing.
Yeah, the whole plate short rib where we slice the table side. Yeah.
Yeah. So the guy's wheeling it out and I'm videotaping it and I'm like narrating music and I'm cutting to House, and House is like, it looks like he's going to have a conniption, and we're all just like, we are going to make love to this giant short rib thing. And the place is packed, and I was like, God damn it. This feels like it was 100 years ago.
It really does. I mean, you just describing it, I was like, I want to eat that. So we're going to get back to dining. It's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of change, and I can't wait to do it because the last meal we had together before Parks was at Chispaca.
Yeah.
And that was like the last supper for many of us for a while. And I think it's going to happen again. It's just going to take some time, and there's going to be some seismic shifts, but it's an adjustment period, and we'll see what happens.
That night is in my top 5 from February of, I have no idea how I didn't get COVID that month nights, because we had the dinner and then we went to some bar for a birthday party. It was absolutely packed. And it was like 2 weeks before everything got shut down.
Yeah, we were in a giant ballroom in K-Town.
And it was packed. Like people spitting. It was loud. People are just spitting on each other as they're talking. And it's like, this is exactly how you get COVID. We dodged a bullet. I had a couple of those
coming in from
February.
all over the world at that party. I was like, oh my God, you're right. How the hell did we not get COVID then?
I had another one at All-Star Weekend in Chicago. I ended up at some bar. There was like 1,000 people in there and it was packed. Like people packed like sardines. Same thing, leaning over, spitting on each other. And you just think like it just would have taken one of those. But, I
can't wait for that to happen. What do you think's going to happen with stadiums, Bill, and sports?
So I'll tell you this. Now, I don't know if this is false bravado, but I think the leagues are really confident things are going to be normal May, June for 2 reasons. One is the vaccine. And, God only knows when everybody's going to be able to get it and the political stuff that comes with that and how it gets doled out. If there's complications, who knows? But between that and the rapid testing's getting better by April, I think the NBA, I think they're looking at June, July as like, we're going to have fans at playoff games and we need it. And that's how it's going to play out. And we have to prepare like this is the reality for us. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But there is a weird confidence right now. And I think the same thing for the concert industry. Mm-hmm. I think places like Live Nation are like, we're having concerts this summer and we're booking all these arenas and people are going to want to go to concerts because they want to get the fuck out of their house for the apartment for the first time.
When do you think you'll go to a Clippers game? Like, do you miss live games?
I really did. I'm way more than, I think I'm mad at myself for taking it for granted. I actually miss, the thing I probably miss the most is just, I always had the ability to just go to Boston, go to a Celtic game or a Red Sox game, hang out with my dad, go to a couple places. And now it's like Boston shut down. And just like not having that option has been really like mess with my head. I mean, granted, there's worse things than the pandemic, but I miss going to the Boston cameos way more than just, the typical Clipper game. But I really miss the finals. I really felt it, especially those last 2 rounds where, I always try to go to a couple finals games or if the Celtics were in the Eastern Finals, stuff like that. And the energy and the atmosphere and just having that removed was weird. Like Celtics, Miami, I would have tried to go to every one of those games.
Right.
And it's just like, nope, nobody's going.
I mean, and I know what would have happened. We would have drawn up a plan about what restaurants to eat in each town.
Right.
Right?
No, seriously. Well, especially like it could have been a Boston LA finals, which would have been awesome. When do you think it's coming back? Because I am optimistic for June, July. And I think so many people have so many incentives, so many smart people who have means and money to try to figure this out for everybody else that I'm optimistic.
I'm optimistic. I think things are going to go back to normal as normal can be probably around April, May, talking to people that are much smarter than me. But I think concerts and games are going to go back to normal, which is why I have some concern about the restaurants, which is why if you're listening to this, you need to continue to support restaurants to make sure that, people have places to go before the games and after the games, because this has been a very, very difficult year for everybody, but the restaurant industry has probably been hit the hardest of all the things that you care about. Yeah.
One thing to talk about before we go, because this is definitely something that happened in Manhattan Beach, where the outdoor dining thing, when you go, Manhattan Beach has kind of weirdly been transformed in a cool way, where you think like when you go to Europe, you go to England and there's just people in bars and there's a lot of people outdoors at bars, especially like 3:00, 4:00. I remember when we went there for the Olympics, it really struck me like how much fun London was, where it's just like, oh man, people are just out. and about, and you could feel it in the streets in a way that you're just never going to feel it here in LA. The outdoor dining thing, which requires basically grabbing parking spaces, grabbing territory, either shutting down streets or making them one lane instead of two, or one-way streets, stuff like that. But it does kind of have a revitalizing effect on little areas. And I wonder if we're going to carry that over when this ends, where like in Boston, for example, Charles Street, which is one way, but has a couple really good restaurants on it, and they pushed the outdoor dining out before everything got shut down. And I wasn't there, but my dad was like, it's really cool here. You feel like, it's like Boston is just kind of on steroids, basically. And I wonder, is that going to transfer?
I hope it stays because, I haven't been in New York for a couple months, but everyone has been saying that it's amazing because all the restaurants, it's like there's no traffic with cars. It puts the diner first, and it's a different way of experiencing things. Like we just had it when we went to parks. Like dining outdoors was cool. And it was very similar to me and actually being in Korea and Seoul, where so much of the dining is on the street.
Yeah.
And I hope because, I hope that the government and the local, authorities don't fuck that up, because being able to like walk around and drink and that's another thing. You can like buy takeaway booze. You could just like sort of drink anywhere, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. It's almost like being in an outdoor casino without the tables too.
They never figured out the outdoor blackjack table scene correctly. The couple of them tried it. The Wynn had a really good outdoor blackjack thing, but it was only like 6 or 7 tables. But I always felt like that was undervalued.
Too much distraction going on because they're usually by the pools and there's music. Yeah, I can't do it. I need to like be with someone like you in a dark corner and just focusing. And it's not fun. This is a job.
You need it just the two of us in a death match to see who goes to bed first. Who's going to break the other? I think I won the last one. I outlasted you the last time.
You clearly won. It is, if you want to see Bill Simmons like willpower, it is at the gambling table. He will not leave. It is unbelievable. I will never ever go head to head with you on that again.
I just really like playing blackjack, and my wife's always suspicious of it. She thinks that there's got to be more. You got to be doing stuff. I'm like, no, put a camera on me. I'm usually in the same place for 9 straight hours, and I'm not proud of it. But that's just the way it is.
I miss it so much. I am not joking. I'm one of the main reasons I want to get vaccinated is just so I can gamble at a table.
Well, that's the thing. We always joke about it, me and you and House and people like that having a gambling problem. To me, the real sign of a gambling problem is if you're gambling in a casino right now. Like if you're playing blackjack with plexiglass on either side of you and a mask on, that's going too far. I wouldn't even do that.
Nor I. But
what's fun about that? That defeats the whole purpose. It's about like the vibe and catching a hot table. You're wearing a fucking mask. My favorite podcast I think I did in the last 3 years was when you, me, and House did the post-game show after we were up all night on my pod. It was my dream idea for a podcast that could never happen. Just the post-game Vegas show of guys recapping their 4 a.m. night at the tables. It really worked.
I was in no shape to do it, and I think that's what made it so fun.
All of us were not doing great. Yeah, I don't know. As I'm getting older, I don't know if I can handle it. Any last question? You've had 9 months here to just tinker in the kitchen. One of the pods that we developed that we launched 2 weeks ago, Recipe Club. So you did turkey, and then you did a whole stuffing podcast, which is, I thought one of the key points in that podcast was stuffing is this thing we think about once a year, but if anyone made it at any other point of the year, you'd be like, what? You're making stuffing? Why the fuck are you doing that? But anyway, you're trying to figure out the perfect stuffing recipe. You've done all this trial and error, mostly out of boredom, and you're also cooking stuff for your family and your young son. Have you stumbled on anything that you're like, wow, like almost like a pitcher realizing like, oh, I can throw a split finger. I didn't know I could do this.
Yeah.
Did you develop a new pitch?
I have, I've always, it's almost like if you want to talk about baseball, I was one of those pitchers that was always fucking around with the knuckleball, but I never had any time or I never wanted to put it in the game. And The microwave to me is the knuckleball.
The microwave. Okay.
Yeah. And I have cooked and so many meals in 9 months in the microwave. I've always loved it. I've always had an affinity for it. But now, man, it literally is a future machine here in present day. And I've cooked so many goddamn recipes that aren't supposed to be made in a microwave. So yeah, the microwave to me is like discovering the 3-point shot or something like that. It's unbelievable.
Is there a high-end microwave, or is there a special microwave, or it doesn't matter what the microwave is?
Ultimately, it doesn't matter. There are some bells and whistles you want. You want it to be rotating, blah, blah, blah. But, you don't have to buy a super expensive microwave. The wattage really makes a difference, but, you just have to test it out. So you don't have to buy like $1,000 microwave. The cheapest one on the market, I think, is like $50.
It's been a wrinkle in my house. My daughter who for whatever reason is a really good cook. And I don't really fully understand that. I think it's part she can follow instructions really well, which is why she's good at soccer, because soccer is like repetition, being in the same places, following instructions. But also the trial and error, she can kind of get the hang of that too. But she made this banana bread last week that was out of control. And all of us were like, what the fuck? This is like, you could sell this. So the trial and error of that, which, in general, you're in a good shape because you've been able to hang out with your young son way more than you probably would have if you were working and flying around and doing 17 TV shows and stuff like that. My daughter's 15 and a half. This is probably the last time I'm ever going to really spend like this much time with her. And it's been fun, like being like her subject for the trial and error bakery stuff. I'm already getting nostalgic.
Don't let her become a chef though.
Oh no. I never would. No, you want it like this, right? The best case scenario is somebody who can cook, but they're not doing it professionally and driving themselves crazy and all that stuff. I think it's so funny. All the chefs are like, don't become like me.
Yeah. I'm going to get hate mail. I don't give a shit. I'm like, do you want Hugo to become a chef? I'm like, absolutely not. I don't want to become a chef. It's so fucking hard. But if your daughter's too talented at other things, so if she winds up being a cook, I will have a talk with her to convince her otherwise.
Could be just bakery. Could be like pies and coffee cakes and stuff like that. Chang, great to see you for the second time. More importantly, congrats on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. That was incredible. It was a rare, positive, happy story.
A real positive moment. Yeah. Thanks,
I don't
Bill.
know how you top it. I think I'm worried for you next time you go into Vegas. You're going to be like, your chest is going to be out.
We're going to do Vegas together. I'm not going back to Vegas without you. So we're going to do it together. We'll be able to talk about it then.
I'll tell you this much. It won't be with me wearing a mask, having plexiglass on either side of me. When we go back to Vegas, it'll be real gambling. All right. Good to see you, Chang.
Thanks, Bill.